Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Facts channel. I'm so glad you found your way here. Maybe you had a long day, or maybe you're the kind of person who likes falling asleep to frozen mysteries rather than counting sheep. Either way, tonight's journey is for you. Let your mind relax, your breathing slow, and your body grow light as snow settling on ancient ice. Because tonight, we're exploring Arctic life. The patient, quiet creatures that thrive where the world turns white and still. We'll drift from the depths of dark winter seas to the endless summer light, discovering how life persists in the coldest place on Earth. Some of what you hear tonight may surprise you, or at least spark curiosity as you drift off. Before we begin, if this helps you unwind, consider liking and subscribing. One sleepy soul at a time. Now, let's begin. The Arctic fox grows a coat so thick that it can sleep comfortably at temperatures 50 degrees below zero without shivering. Its fur changes with the seasons, turning from brown in summer to pure white in winter, each hair hollow and filled with air that traps warmth like thousands of tiny blankets. The transformation takes weeks, individual hairs falling and growing in a slow wave across its body. When the fox curls into a ball, its bushy tail wraps around its face, creating a breathing hole surrounded by fur, and in this position, it can rest through the longest, darkest nights. The animal becomes a small white sphere against the snow, barely visible, perfectly still. This leads to something even more remarkable about how Arctic foxes survive the lean times. They cache food throughout the warmer months, hiding eggs and small prey in scattered locations across their territory. A single fox may create hundreds of these small buried treasures, relying on memory and scent to relocate them when snow covers everything. The frozen ground acts as a natural freezer, preserving their stores for months. When blizzards rage and hunting becomes impossible, the fox simply digs through snow to retrieve meals it buried during abundance. This patience, this planning for hardship, allows them to endure when other predators struggle. The polar bear spends most of its life alone, wandering across sea ice in search of seals. These bears are the largest land carnivores on Earth, with males weighing as much as 10 adult humans, yet they move across thin ice with surprising grace. Their paws measure nearly a foot across, spreading their weight like natural snowshoes, and the bottom of each paw is covered with small bumps called papillae that provide grip on slippery surfaces. Between their toes, fur grows so densely that it protects against cold and helps with traction. When a bear walks, it places each enormous paw carefully, testing the ice, patient as stone. They can swim for days without rest, paddling through frigid waters with their front paws, while their back legs trail behind like rudders. Not all polar bears hunt in the same way. Some learn to wait motionless beside seal breathing holes in the ice, standing so still for hours that snow accumulates on their backs. When a seal surfaces for air, the bear strikes with a single swift motion, using strength accumulated during the long, quiet wait. Other bears stalk seals resting on ice, crawling forward on their bellies, moving only when the seal's head is down. The approach can take an hour, each movement measured, each pause perfectly timed. In this frozen world, patience is the difference between feast and famine, and the bears have learned to embody stillness itself. While polar bears dominate the ice above, beneath the frozen surface, Arctic cod swim in massive schools through water that should be too cold for fish to survive. These small fish produce a natural antifreeze in their blood, proteins that prevent ice crystals from forming in their cells, even when the water around them drops below the normal freezing point. They can survive in water as cold as 29 degrees Fahrenheit, swimming slowly through darkness under thick sea ice. The cod feed on tiny zooplankton and small crustaceans, filtering them from the water as they drift through the quiet depths. During winter, when the sun disappears for months, these fish continue their slow existence in near total darkness, their silver bodies flashing occasionally in the dim light that filters through the ice above. They are the foundation of the Arctic food web, converting microscopic life into protein that feeds seals, seabirds, and larger fish. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how creatures navigate eternal darkness. The Arctic tern makes the longest migration of any animal on Earth, flying from Arctic to Antarctic and back again each year, a round trip of more than 40,000 miles. These birds experience 2 summers every year and more daylight than any other creature alive. When autumn approaches in the north, the terns lift into the air and begin a journey that will take them across entire oceans, following coastlines and wind patterns inherited from generations before. They feed as they travel, dipping to catch small fish from the surface, rarely resting on land. The journey takes months, but the birds arrive in Antarctica just as summer begins there, and they hunt under the midnight sun once again. In this way, these delicate birds avoid true winter altogether, living in an endless summer that spans the globe. The narwhal carries what appears to be a long spiral tusk, but this projection is actually an elongated tooth that grows through the animal's upper lip. Male narwhals typically have this tusk, which can reach 10 feet in length, and researchers believe it serves as a sensory organ. The tusk contains millions of nerve endings, making it extraordinarily sensitive to changes in water pressure, temperature, and chemical composition. When narwhals touch tusks with one another, a behavior called tusking, they may be exchanging information about their environment or establishing social bonds. These whales live in the coldest parts of the Arctic, areas where sea ice covers the ocean for much of the year, and they have adapted to breathe through small cracks and openings in the ice. They dive deep, sometimes more than a mile below the surface, hunting for fish in total darkness. When they surface, they breathe slowly, their bodies dark against white ice, the spiral tusk catching light like something from an ancient story. This leads to something even more remarkable about life beneath Arctic ice. Ringed seals create breathing holes by scratching the ice from below, maintaining these openings throughout winter, even as the ice grows thicker above them. The seals return to the same holes repeatedly, using their strong claws to scrape away new ice that forms. In spring, female seals dig dens in snowdrifts above these breathing holes, creating hidden caves where they give birth to single pups. The pups are born with white fluffy fur that provides camouflage against the snow, and they remain in these dens for weeks, nursing on milk so rich in fat that they gain several pounds each day. The mother slips into the water through the breathing hole to hunt, then returns to nurse her pup in the quiet darkness of the snow den. The structure protects the pup from wind and cold, and from predators that pass nearby without detecting the hidden chamber. Not all seals live solitary lives on the ice. Harp seals gather in large groups to give birth on pack ice, creating nurseries where thousands of white pups lie scattered across the frozen surface. The mothers identify their own pups by scent and sound, calling to them across the ice. Each pup develops quickly, nursing for only about 12 days before the mother returns to the sea. The pup is then left alone on the ice, living off its accumulated fat stores while its white baby fur gradually molts away, revealing the darker, waterproof coat beneath. During this transition, the young seal cannot swim well and must remain on the ice, vulnerable but perfectly camouflaged. Eventually, driven by hunger and instinct, the young seal slips into the water for the first time and begins learning to hunt, joining the cycle of Arctic life. While seals rest on ice above, the bowhead whale swims through Arctic waters year-round, the only whale species that spends its entire life in polar and subpolar zones. These massive whales have skulls so thick and strong that they can break through ice nearly 2 feet thick to create breathing holes. Their heads are bowed, giving them their name, and this distinctive shape allows them to push upward against ice from below. Bowhead whales can live for more than 200 years, making them among the longest-lived mammals on Earth. Scientists discovered this when they found old harpoon points embedded in living whales, weapons manufactured more than a century earlier. The whales carry these remnants of past encounters in their blubber, reminders of survival across impossible spans of time. They sing complex songs that travel through water for miles, low-frequency sounds that other whales can hear across vast distances. In the darkness beneath ice, sound becomes the primary sense, and these songs map the social world of whales separated by space, but connected through vibration. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how Arctic creatures communicate across emptiness. The snowy owl hunts during both day and night, a necessary adaptation in a place where summer brings constant daylight and winter brings constant darkness. These large white birds have feathers that grow even on their feet, covering them completely, except for their dark talons. Unlike most owls, which hunt only at night, snowy owls can see equally well in light or darkness. Their hearing is so acute that they can locate prey moving beneath snow, pinpointing the position of a lemming in its tunnel by sound alone. The owl hovers above, then plunges down through snow to seize prey it never saw. During summer, when lemmings are abundant, a pair of owls may raise 7 or more chicks, but in lean years, they may not nest at all, wandering south instead in search of food. The birds embody a kind of patience, waiting for the right conditions, adapting their behavior to the rhythm of the Arctic itself. This leads to something even more remarkable about birds that choose to stay through darkness. The ptarmigan changes its plumage 3 times each year, adapting to the shifting landscape of snow, rock, and summer tundra. In winter, the bird becomes completely white, except for its dark eyes and beak, vanishing against snow. Its feathers grow so densely that they cover even its feet and nostrils, creating insulation against cold that would freeze other birds. The ptarmigan feeds on buds, twigs, and catkins that it finds by digging through snow, surviving on vegetation that other animals cannot reach or digest. At night, these birds burrow into snowdrifts, creating small caves where they sleep protected from wind and predators. Inside these snow burrows, the temperature may be 30 degrees warmer than the air outside, the bird's own heat trapped by the snow's insulation. In this way, winter becomes something the ptarmigan inhabits rather than endures, using the landscape itself as shelter. Not all Arctic birds remain year-round. The snow goose migrates thousands of miles between Arctic breeding grounds and southern wintering areas, traveling in flocks that can number in the tens of thousands. When these birds arrive in the Arctic each spring, the tundra is still frozen, but the geese have timed their arrival to coincide with the brief burst of plant growth that follows snowmelt. They nest in colonies, building simple nests on the ground and laying eggs almost immediately. The female incubates while the male guards, both birds living off fat reserves accumulated before migration. The goslings hatch, covered in down, able to walk and feed themselves within hours. The family stays together through summer, the young birds growing rapidly on the explosion of plant life that covers the tundra for a few short weeks. When autumn frosts begin, the geese gather in massive flocks and depart south, their calls echoing across empty sky, the tundra settling back into silence. While birds come and go with the seasons, the muskox remains through every Arctic winter, its body built for endurance rather than escape. These shaggy animals have 2 layers of fur, a short dense undercoat that provides insulation and a long outer coat that hangs almost to the ground, shedding wind and snow. When storms approach, musk oxen gather in tight groups, facing outward in a defensive formation called a circle, with young animals protected in the center. They can stand this way for hours, barely moving, the storm breaking around them while they remain solid as boulders. Their metabolism slows during winter, reducing their need for food, and they pour through snow to reach dried grasses and willows frozen beneath. The animals move slowly across the tundra, a small herd appearing dark against endless white, their breath freezing in clouds around their heads. They embody persistence, surviving through simple presence, outlasting wind and cold through sheer patience. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how large animals find enough food in barren landscapes. The caribou migrates farther than any other land mammal, walking more than 3,000 miles each year between winter forests and summer tundra. These migrations follow routes established over thousands of years, paths worn into the land by countless hooves. In spring, pregnant females lead the movement north, traveling to traditional calving grounds on the tundra, where wolves and bears are less abundant. The calves are born during this journey, dropped onto the ground and standing within minutes, ready to walk immediately because staying still means death. The herd moves continuously, the caribou feeding on new plant growth as they travel, never staying long enough to deplete any area. By constantly moving, they follow the brief flush of nutrition across the landscape, staying ahead of biting insects that emerge in summer. When autumn arrives, they turn south again, walking back toward forests where snow is less deep and lichen remains accessible through winter beneath the trees. This leads to something even more remarkable about caribou adaptation. Their hooves change with the seasons, hardening in winter to provide traction on ice and softening in summer for better grip on tundra. The hooves are large and splayed, preventing the animals from sinking into deep snow. And when they walk, their tendons click with each step, creating a sound that helps the herd stay together in fog or darkness. Caribou can swim strong and steady, crossing rivers and even ocean channels between islands, their hollow guard hairs providing buoyancy that keeps them high in the water. Wolves follow the herds, selecting weak or old animals, and this predation keeps the caribou population strong. The relationship between hunter and hunted is ancient, each species shaping the other through countless generations. In this dance of movement across the Arctic, both predator and prey find their rhythm. Not all caribou migrate long distances. Some populations remain year-round on islands or in specific regions, adapting to more limited territories. These caribou have learned to survive on smaller ranges, their populations fluctuating with weather and food availability. They dig feeding craters in snow, using their hooves to expose lichen and dried vegetation. A single caribou may dig dozens of craters each day, moving from spot to spot in search of adequate nutrition. The animals must balance the energy spent digging with the energy gained from food, a calculation that becomes critical as winter deepens. When snow becomes too deep or ice too thick, caribou lose weight, their bodies consuming stored fat. If conditions remain harsh too long, some animals die, their bodies left on the snow where Arctic foxes and ravens feed on them. This is the arithmetic of Arctic survival, measured in calories and calculated in snow depth. While caribou wander the land above, Arctic char swim in lakes and rivers, some populations spending their entire lives in fresh water, while others migrate to the ocean each summer. These fish are related to salmon and trout, their bodies silver and spotted, often tinged with pink or orange along the belly. In landlocked lakes, char may live for decades, growing slowly in cold water where food is scarce. They feed on insects, small fish, and anything else they can catch, opportunistic survivors in environments where meals are unpredictable. The fish spawn in autumn, laying eggs in gravel beds at the bottom of lakes or in river shallows. The eggs develop slowly through winter, hatching in spring when water temperatures rise slightly. Young char remain near the bottom, hiding among rocks, growing gradually through summer. They embody patience itself, living slow lives in cold darkness, building strength over years. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how fish survive in water that freezes solid. Some Arctic ponds contain fish that endure winter in shallow water, where ice forms from the top down and from the bottom up, leaving only a thin layer of liquid water in between. The fish become sluggish as temperatures drop, their metabolism slowing until they barely move. Oxygen levels fall as ice covers the surface, preventing gas exchange with the air. In these conditions, fish enter a state of near-suspended animation. Their heartbeats slow, their breathing shallow. They survive by shutting down all non-essential functions, existing in a twilight state between life and frozen stasis. When spring arrives and ice melts, the fish gradually resume normal activity, as if waking from a long dream. This ability to endure months of extreme conditions demonstrates the remarkable flexibility of life. This leads to something even more remarkable about invertebrates that freeze solid and survive. The Arctic woolly bear caterpillar spends up to 14 years as a larva, freezing solid each winter and thawing each spring, eating for a few short weeks during Arctic summer before freezing again. These fuzzy caterpillars feed on low-growing plants, consuming what they can during the brief period when vegetation is available and temperatures allow activity. As autumn approaches, the caterpillar seeks shelter under a rock or in leaf litter, and its body temperature drops below freezing. Ice crystals form in the caterpillar's body, but a natural antifreeze in its cells prevents the ice from damaging vital tissues. The frozen caterpillar's heart stops beating, and it shows no signs of life. Yet it is not dead, merely paused. When warmth returns in spring, the caterpillar thaws slowly, its heart resuming, its metabolism restarting, and it crawls out to feed again. After years of this cycle, the caterpillar finally pupates, transforms into a moth, mates, lays eggs, and dies, all within a few weeks of summer. The adult stage is brief, but those weeks are the culmination of years of patient waiting. Not all Arctic insects spend years developing. Mosquitoes emerge in massive swarms during Arctic summer, hatching from eggs laid in tundra ponds. The larvae develop rapidly in the brief warmth, pupating and emerging as adults within weeks. Female mosquitoes need blood to produce eggs, and they descend on caribou and other mammals in clouds so thick that the animals flee, running to windy ridges where fewer insects reach them. The constant harassment from mosquitoes affects caribou behavior and movement patterns, driving them to specific areas and influencing where they graze. Male mosquitoes do not bite, instead feeding on nectar from the small flowers that bloom across the tundra. The adult mosquitoes live only a few weeks, dying with the first frosts, but their eggs remain dormant through winter, ready to hatch when water warms again. In this way, life concentrates into brief windows of opportunity, packing generations into weeks. While insects hatch and die in quick cycles, Arctic spiders can live for several years, hunting slowly across the tundra. These small predators build no webs, instead actively pursuing prey across rocks and between plants. The spiders feed on springtails, mites, and small insects, pouncing on them with quick movements that seem out of place in the Arctic's generally slow pace. Like other Arctic creatures, these spiders have antifreeze compounds in their bodies that prevent ice formation in their cells. They spend winter hidden under bark or stones, their metabolism slowed almost to nothing, existing in a state barely distinguishable from death. When warmth returns, the spiders emerge hungry and begin hunting immediately. Their simple hunting strategy, evolved over millions of years, works as well in the Arctic as similar strategies work in warmer climates. The basic template of spider life persists even here, adapted but recognizable. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how plants survive, where cold should make growth impossible. Arctic willows grow close to the ground, their branches spreading horizontally rather than reaching upward, staying beneath the wind where air is slightly warmer. These shrubs may be decades old yet only inches tall, adding tiny increments of growth each year. Their roots spread wide, anchoring in shallow soil above permafrost. When summer arrives, the willows quickly produce catkins, soft fuzzy flowers that appear before the leaves fully develop. These catkins provide early pollen for insects emerging hungry from winter dormancy. The willow leaves that follow are small and often fuzzy, covered with fine hairs that reduce water loss and provide some insulation against cold. In autumn, the leaves yellow and fall, and the bare twigs disappear beneath snow, where they remain protected through winter. The plant's growth rings are packed so tightly that counting them requires magnification, each ring representing one brief summer. This leads to something even more remarkable about tundra plants that bloom in cold. Arctic poppies track the sun across the sky, their cup-shaped flowers turning to face the light throughout the day. The shape of the flower focuses sunlight into the center, creating a warm spot where temperatures may be several degrees higher than the surrounding air. Insects seeking warmth crawl into the flower center, basking in this solar trap while pollinating the plant. The poppy's strategy benefits both flower and insect, exchanging warmth for reproductive service. These bright yellow flowers stand out against gray and brown tundra, visible from distance, and they close at night or during storms, protecting their reproductive parts from cold and wind. The plants grow low, their stems short, their leaves forming rosettes pressed against the ground where air is warmest. Despite the harsh conditions, the poppies complete their entire life cycle within weeks, flowering, being pollinated, and setting seed before summer ends. Not all tundra plants flower quickly. Some mosses and lichens grow so slowly that individual patches may be centuries old, expanding outward at rates measured in millimeters per year. Lichens are not actually single organisms, but partnerships between fungi and algae, the fungus providing structure and protection, while the algae photosynthesize and share the resulting sugars. These partnerships can survive in conditions that would kill either organism alone, enduring cold, drought, and near total lack of nutrients. Lichens grow on bare rock, gradually breaking down the stone and creating the first soil where other plants may eventually take root. They can survive being frozen for months, dried out completely, or covered in snow, resuming growth whenever conditions allow. In the Arctic, where opportunities for growth are rare, these patient organisms make the most of every possible moment, accumulating biomass across decades. While lichens carpet the rocks, cotton grass waves across wet areas of the tundra, its white, fluffy seed heads catching wind. These plants thrive in boggy areas, where permafrost keeps water at the surface, creating shallow pools and wet meadows. The cotton grass produces dense tufts of seeds, each seed attached to long white hairs that catch the breeze and carry the seed away. When the seed heads ripen in summer, entire meadows appear white, as if snow has fallen selectively in low areas. Birds use the fluffy seed heads as nesting material, lining their nests with the soft fibers. The plant's leaves are thin and grass-like, dying back each autumn and regrowing each spring from underground rhizomes that survive the winter beneath frozen ground. The rhizomes spread slowly, allowing the plant to colonize new areas gradually, building communities of genetically identical stems that emerge over years. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how animals time their reproduction to coincide with brief abundance. The lemming follows a population cycle that peaks every few years, with their numbers exploding during favorable conditions and crashing when resources become scarce. These small rodents live under the snow during winter, creating tunnel systems through the space between ground and snowpack. They remain active all winter, feeding on frozen vegetation, breeding in their snow tunnels even in the darkest months. When spring melts the snow, the lemmings emerge, sometimes in enormous numbers, their populations having grown through the hidden winter months. During peak years, lemmings seem to be everywhere, their constant movement visible across the tundra. Predators converge on these abundant prey, snowy owls and Arctic foxes raising large families during lemming boom years. But the population crashes as vegetation is overgrazed and predators take their toll, and the tundra becomes nearly empty of lemmings again. This leads to something even more remarkable about the connection between predator and prey populations. When lemmings are scarce, Arctic foxes may have few or no kits, with females either not breeding or raising only one or two offspring. The foxes travel long distances in search of food, scavenging kills from polar bears or hunting seabirds along the coast. During these lean times, fox populations decline, sometimes dramatically. But when lemmings are abundant again, the same foxes may give birth to litters of a dozen pups, the most of any wild canid. The female remains in the den nursing, while the male brings food, and if lemmings are plentiful enough, nearby foxes may help feed the pups, a behavior rare among mammals. The entire ecosystem pulses with this cycle of abundance and scarcity, predator populations following prey populations up and down across years. Nothing in the Arctic exists in isolation. Each species responds to others in patterns that play out across seasons and decades. Not all predators depend entirely on lemmings. The wolverine hunts across enormous territories, scavenging and hunting whatever it can find. These powerful animals are built like small bears, with thick fur, broad paws, and immense strength for their size. A wolverine can bring down prey much larger than itself, and it can crush frozen meat and bone that other scavengers cannot eat. They cache food in scattered locations, burying it in snow or hiding it under rocks, returning to these caches when hunting is poor. A single wolverine may roam across hundreds of square miles, climbing mountains, crossing glaciers, covering ground with a rolling gait that looks awkward but proves efficient across long distances. They breed in late winter, and females dig dens deep in snowdrifts, where they give birth to kits in early spring. The kits remain with their mother for a year or more, learning the vast territory and the skills needed to survive in one of Earth's harshest environments. While wolverines wander alone, the wolf hunts in packs, using cooperation to bring down caribou and musk oxen that a single wolf could never kill. Arctic wolves are smaller than their southern cousins and have white or pale gray fur that blends with snow. A pack typically consists of a breeding pair and their offspring from multiple years, with the group working together to hunt, den, and raise pups. When the pack hunts caribou, they test the herd, running alongside and watching for any animal that shows weakness or limps. Most hunts fail, the caribou outrunning the wolves or turning to face them. But when a hunt succeeds, the wolves feed together, the pack strengthened by cooperation. In spring, the breeding female digs a den or renovates an old one, giving birth to pups while the pack hunts to feed her. The pups emerge from the den after a few weeks, tumbling and playing while adults bring them food. The entire pack participates in raising the young, teaching them to hunt and howl and fit into the pack's social structure. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how sound carries across empty spaces. The Arctic wolf's howl can travel for miles across frozen tundra, the sound carrying clearly through cold, dense air. The pack howls together before hunts, the voices rising and falling in complex patterns that seem to strengthen social bonds. Each wolf has a distinctive voice, and pack members can identify individuals by their howls. When packs occupy neighboring territories, they howl back and forth across the boundary, communicating presence and perhaps strength without direct confrontation. The howls echo off ice and rock, creating ghostly repetitions that fade slowly into silence. In the constant daylight of summer, or the constant darkness of winter, these vocalizations help wolves maintain contact across vast territories, sound replacing sight as the primary sense for distance communication. This leads to something even more remarkable about how animals navigate in darkness. The beluga whale uses echolocation to find fish and navigate beneath ice, sending out clicks and listening for the returning echoes. These white whales have flexible necks, unusual among whales, allowing them to turn their heads and direct their sonar in different directions. The rounded forehead, called a melon, focuses the sound waves, and the whale can change the melon's shape to adjust the focus. Belugas hunt fish, squid, and bottom-dwelling creatures in waters too dark for vision to be useful. They travel in groups called pods, the individuals maintaining contact through a repertoire of whistles, chirps, and other vocalizations so varied that early whalers called them sea canaries. The whales migrate with the ice edge, moving into shallow bays and estuaries when ice retreats, and returning to deeper water when ice advances. They can survive in water near freezing and can break through thin ice by ramming it with their heads, a behavior that sometimes leaves scars on their white skin. Not all whales produce such varied sounds. The bowhead whale sings long, complex songs, but scientists are still working to understand their meaning. These songs change over time, with new phrases appearing and old ones disappearing, suggesting cultural transmission of vocal traditions. The whales sing most often during late autumn through spring, which coincides with their breeding season. leading researchers to believe the songs play a role in mating, but the songs are sung by multiple whales, not just males, complicating simple explanations. The low-frequency sounds can travel hundreds of miles through water, potentially allowing whales to communicate across vast distances. In the darkness beneath ice, these songs create an acoustic landscape that maps the social world, whales finding each other through vibration in cold water. While whales sing below, walruses haul out on ice floes and rocky beaches, their massive bodies pressed together in crowded groups. A male walrus can weigh more than a ton, with tusks that may reach 3 feet in length. These tusks, which are elongated canine teeth, are used for displays of dominance, for defense, and for hauling the animal's body out of water onto ice, which gives the walrus its name, meaning tooth walker. Walruses dive to the seafloor to feed, using their sensitive whiskers to locate clams and other mollusks buried in sediment. The whiskers, called vibrissae, are so sensitive they can detect the siphons of buried clams, and a walrus may consume thousands of clams in a single day. On the bottom, the walrus uses jets of water from its mouth to blast away sediment, exposing the shellfish, which it sucks from the shell with powerful suction. The discarded shells litter the seafloor in areas where walruses feed regularly, piles of empty shells marking productive hunting grounds. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how social animals maintain bonds across time. Walruses are highly social, and females with young form nursery groups, where calves play and nurse while mothers rest. The bond between mother and calf is strong, lasting for years. Calves nurse for up to 2 years, one of the longest nursing periods among pinnipeds. During this time, the mother teaches the calf to dive, to find food, and to recognize danger. If a calf is separated from its mother, both will call loudly until reunited, their vocalizations distinct enough that individuals recognize each other's voices. The calves are playful, climbing on resting adults and splashing in shallow water, their games building strength and coordination that will serve them throughout their lives. Even after weaning, young walruses may remain near their mothers for another year, learning the locations of good feeding areas and the timing of migrations. This leads to something even more remarkable about how ice itself creates habitat. Sea ice provides crucial resting platforms for seals, walruses, and polar bears, and its seasonal advance and retreat structures the entire Arctic marine ecosystem. When sea ice forms in autumn, it expands outward from the Arctic Ocean, covering vast areas of northern seas. The ice edge, where solid ice meets open water, becomes a zone of intense biological activity. Algae grow on the underside of sea ice, forming dense mats that photosynthesize using light that penetrates the ice. These ice algae bloom early in spring, before plankton in open water begin to multiply, providing food for zooplankton that gather beneath the ice. The zooplankton attract fish, which in turn attract seals and whales. The entire food web builds upward from algae clinging to ice, sunlight converted to sugar, and then passed through increasingly complex organisms. Not all ice is the same. Multi-year ice, which survives through multiple summers without melting completely, becomes thick and strong, sometimes more than 10 feet thick. This old ice has less salt than new ice, because brine drains out over time, and it can be strong enough to support polar bears and research stations. First-year ice, which forms in autumn and melts the following summer, is thinner and more fragile. Between these solid sheets, polynyas form, areas of open water surrounded by ice, kept open by currents or upwelling warm water. These polynyas are crucial for marine mammals that need to breathe, and they concentrate wildlife in predictable locations. Birds gather above polynyas to feed, and whales visit them to breathe. The pattern of ice formation and melt creates a shifting landscape that changes daily, and Arctic animals have learned to read these changes and respond to them. While the ocean freezes and melts below the ice, the seafloor hosts communities adapted to permanent cold and darkness. Giant sea spiders walk across the bottom on legs that span more than a foot, their bodies so small that they appear to be all legs. These arthropods breathe through their legs, absorbing oxygen directly from water through their thin exoskeletons. They move slowly across the seafloor, feeding on soft-bodied creatures like anemones and sponges. In the constant cold of deep Arctic water, metabolism slows, and growth takes years. Animals that might live a few months in warmer water can live for decades in the Arctic deep. A sea star might take decades to grow, adding size so slowly that change is nearly imperceptible. This slow pace of life means that disturbance can have long-lasting effects, damage taking decades to heal. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how life finds energy in permanent darkness. In the deep Arctic Ocean, where no sunlight penetrates, communities of organisms gather around cold seeps, where methane bubbles up from the seafloor. Specialized bacteria convert methane into energy, forming the base of a food web that includes clams, worms, and crabs that depend on chemical energy rather than sunlight. These chemosynthetic communities exist in complete independence from photosynthesis, deriving energy from Earth's interior rather than from the sunday. The organisms grow slowly in the cold water, their populations stable over long periods. Researchers discovered these communities only recently, finding ecosystems in a place that should be too cold and dark to support much life. The discovery reshaped understanding of where life can exist and what forms it can take. This leads to something even more remarkable about seasonal change in polar regions. During Arctic summer, the sun never sets, circling the horizon and maintaining constant daylight for weeks or months, depending on latitude. This midnight sun drives intense photosynthesis in both water and on land, and primary production explodes during the brief warm period. Phytoplankton bloom in vast quantities, turning the ocean green, and their populations can multiply tenfold in a week when conditions are right. This surge of plant growth supports zooplankton populations that increase rapidly, and these small animals become food for fish, seabirds, and whales. The entire food web pulses with energy, life compressed into a short window. Animals that breed in the Arctic time their reproduction to coincide with peak food availability, their chicks or calves growing rapidly on abundant resources. Not all of this energy is consumed immediately. Some of it sinks to the seafloor as dead organisms and fecal pellets, a gentle rain of organic matter that feeds bottom-dwelling creatures. This biological pump transfers energy from the surface to the deep, supporting life in darkness. The rain of organic matter is not constant, but peaks after the surface bloom, so bottom dwellers experience a seasonal pulse of food, even though they live in eternal night. Deep-sea creatures have adapted to this pattern, emerging from burrows when food arrives and retreating when it becomes scarce again. The connection between surface and depth, between light and darkness, structures the entire ocean ecosystem. While summer brings abundance, winter brings the opposite. Phytoplankton cannot photosynthesize without light, so primary production nearly ceases during the dark months. The zooplankton that thrived in summer either migrate to deeper water, enter dormancy, or die, leaving only eggs or resting stages to survive until spring. Fish that fed on zooplankton must switch to other prey or rely on stored fat. The ecosystem enters a state of suspended animation, waiting for the sun's return. Some species migrate away, following the sun south, while others remain, adapted to endure darkness. This annual cycle of feast and famine has shaped Arctic life for millions of years, and the species present today are those whose ancestors successfully navigated these extremes. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how animals find food when prey is scarce. The Arctic skua, also called the parasitic jaeger, specializes in stealing food from other birds rather than catching its own. These birds harass gulls and terns until the victims drop or regurgitate their catch, which the skua then snatches from the air or water. The skuas are fast and agile flyers, able to outmaneuver most other seabirds, They nest on tundra, often near seabird colonies where they can easily steal food for their chicks. The skua pairs are territorial, defending nesting areas aggressively, diving at intruders including humans who venture too close. Despite their reputation as thieves, skuas also hunt lemmings and small birds, and they scavenge when opportunities arise. Their opportunistic strategy allows them to exploit various food sources, adapting to whatever is available. This leads to something even more remarkable about birds that nest in the treeless Arctic. The red-throated loon nests beside small tundra ponds, but flies to larger lakes or the ocean to feed, commuting between nesting and feeding areas. The loon's feet are positioned far back on its body, an adaptation for swimming that makes walking nearly impossible. On land, the bird pushes itself forward on its belly, awkward and vulnerable. But in water, this body plan makes the loon a superb diver, able to pursue fish with speed and agility. The loon dives deep, sometimes more than 100 feet, chasing fish in cold, clear water. It returns to its nest, carrying fish to feed its chicks, the young birds eating whole fish almost as large as themselves. The nest is built at the water's edge, allowing the adult to slip directly from nest to water without walking. When the chicks are large enough, they follow their parents into the water, and the family remains together through summer, the adults teaching the young to dive and fish. Not all water birds are equally graceful in flight. The thick-billed murre is a diving seabird that uses its wings to swim underwater, essentially flying through the ocean. The wings are short and stubby, a compromise between the long wings needed for efficient flight in air and the short wings needed for underwater propulsion. As a result, murres must flap their wings rapidly to stay aloft, and they look ungainly in flight, their bodies heavy and their wing beats frantic. But underwater, they transform into graceful hunters, using their wings to bank and turn while pursuing fish. Murres nest on narrow cliff ledges in enormous colonies where thousands of birds crowd together. The eggs are pear-shaped, rolling in a circle rather than off the ledge when bumped. Each pair lays a single egg, and both parents take turns incubating, changing shifts with loud calling and careful navigation through the crowded colony. While murres nest on cliffs, the Arctic tern nests on flat ground, building simple scrapes in gravel or sand. These small, light birds are the long-distance champions mentioned earlier, but they also defend their nests aggressively despite their small size. When a predator approaches, the entire colony rises in alarm, the birds diving at the intruder and sometimes striking with their sharp beaks. The tern's alarm calls bring more birds from nearby, and a person walking through a tern colony must shield their head from the diving birds. The terns feed by plunge diving into water, spotting small fish from the air and diving to catch them just below the surface. During the brief Arctic summer, food is abundant, and the terns feed their chicks frequently, the young birds growing quickly. By late summer, the chicks are ready to make the incredible migration to Antarctica, a journey they will repeat annually for the rest of their lives. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how birds navigate across featureless oceans. Many Arctic migrants travel thousands of miles over water, yet they arrive at specific destinations with remarkable accuracy. Some species use the Earth's magnetic field to navigate, sensing it through specialized cells in their eyes or beaks. Others use the position of the sun and stars, calculating direction from celestial cues. Young birds, making their first migration, often travel separately from adults, yet they find the correct destination, suggesting that navigation information is inherited rather than learned. The mechanisms remain partially mysterious, but the results are undeniable, with tiny birds crossing entire oceans and arriving exactly where they need to be. This leads to something even more remarkable about marine mammals that also undertake long migrations. The gray whale, though not exclusively Arctic, feeds in northern waters during summer, traveling from breeding grounds off Mexico to feeding grounds in the Bering and Chukchi seas. The whales filter small crustaceans from bottom sediments, turning on their sides and sucking in sediment-laden water, filtering out prey and expelling mud through their baleen. A single whale may consume more than a ton of food daily, building fat reserves for the long migration and winter fasting period. The journey between Mexico and Alaska spans more than 5,000 miles one way, making it one of the longest migrations of any mammal. The whales travel along the coast, visible from shore in many places, their spouts marking their progress northward in spring and southward in autumn. Not all marine mammals migrate such distances. The bearded seal lives year-round in Arctic waters, preferring areas with moving pack ice where leads and openings allow easy access to water. These seals are larger than ringed seals and have elaborate whiskers that grow forward from their muzzles, giving them a distinctive appearance. The whiskers are extremely sensitive, allowing the seals to find bottom-dwelling prey like clams and crabs, even in murky water or complete darkness. Bearded seals sing complex underwater songs during breeding season, the males vocalizing to attract females, and perhaps to establish territories. The songs include trills, moans, and ascending whistles that can last several minutes. These vocalizations travel through water, potentially allowing seals to communicate across distances of several miles. While seals sing below water, the ivory gull spends its life near the ice edge, rarely venturing far from pack ice. These pure white gulls nest on cliffs and rocky outcrops, but they feed primarily by scavenging seal kills from polar bears and finding marine carrion. The gulls follow polar bears across the ice, waiting for the bear to make a kill and then descending to feed on scraps. They also eat the feces of marine mammals, extracting nutrients from partially digested material. This strategy allows them to survive in areas where other food is scarce, making the most of every resource. The ivory gull's population has declined in recent decades, possibly due to changes in ice conditions that affect both prey availability and nesting sites. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how ice conditions affect the entire ecosystem. When sea ice is extensive and thick, it provides abundant habitat for ice-dependent species, like ringed seals and polar bears. But when ice melts earlier in spring, or forms later in autumn, these animals struggle. Polar bears rely on ice as a platform for hunting seals. And when ice breaks up, bears must either swim long distances to remain with it, or come ashore where food is scarce. Female polar bears that come ashore pregnant must fast for months while gestating and nursing cubs, living entirely off fat reserves. If they did not accumulate enough fat during the spring hunting season, they may not survive, or their cubs may not thrive. The timing and extent of sea ice directly determines the success or failure of entire generations of ice-dependent animals. This leads to something even more remarkable about how climate patterns affect Arctic ecosystems. The Arctic Oscillation, a pattern of atmospheric pressure differences between the Arctic and mid-latitudes, influences wind patterns, ice extent, and weather across the entire northern hemisphere. When the oscillation is in its positive phase, winds trap cold air over the Arctic and bring milder weather to Europe and Asia. When negative, cold air spills south, and Arctic temperatures may be less extreme. These patterns fluctuate over weeks and months, creating variability in ice formation and weather that animals must navigate. Long-term trends matter, but so does year-to-year variability, and species must be flexible enough to respond to changing conditions within their lifetimes. Not all change happens slowly. Storms can reshape ice in hours, breaking solid sheets into jumbled masses, or creating pressure ridges where ice piles up. Polar bears use pressure ridges as dens, excavating caves in the piled ice where they sleep sheltered from wind. Seals use the same ridges as cover, hauling out in the lee where wind is blocked. The ridges become landmarks in an otherwise flat landscape, and animals return to the same ridges across years. But storms can also trap animals far from open water or land, forcing them to swim or walk long distances. A storm that pushes ice offshore can strand seals on isolated floes, and the floes may drift for weeks before reaching solid ice or shore. While ice drifts across the ocean's surface, beneath it, Ocean currents flow in slow but powerful patterns. The Arctic Ocean receives fresh water from rivers draining Siberia, Alaska, and Canada. And this low salinity water floats on top of denser salt water. The layering creates a two-layer ocean, with light fresh water above and heavier salt water below. These layers mix slowly, and the vertical structure affects where nutrients concentrate and where organisms thrive. Some species live exclusively in the freshwater layer, while others prefer the deeper salt water. The boundary between layers becomes a kind of underwater landscape feature, as important to marine life as hills and valleys are to terrestrial creatures. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how Arctic rivers influence the ocean. During spring snowmelt, rivers carry enormous volumes of fresh water and sediment into the Arctic Ocean, creating plumes of discolored water that spread across the surface. These plumes carry nutrients from land, fertilizing nearshore waters and stimulating plankton growth. The timing of river discharge affects the timing of ocean productivity, and species have adapted their life cycles to this pattern. Salmon enter rivers from the ocean at specific times, swimming upstream to spawn in the same rivers where they were born. Arctic char make similar migrations, leaving the ocean in late summer to spawn in freshwater. The connection between river and ocean is not just physical but biological, with nutrients and organisms flowing in both directions. This leads to something even more remarkable about anadromous fish that split their lives between fresh and salt water. Arctic char that migrate to the ocean grow larger and faster than those that remain in fresh water, the ocean providing more abundant food. But migration carries risks, including predation from seals and gulls as the fish travel through estuaries. The fish must also adjust their physiology to handle the transition from fresh to salt water, changing their kidney function and gill structure to maintain proper salt balance. They feed intensively in the ocean, building fat reserves, then return to rivers in autumn. In the river, they find spawning grounds with clean gravel and cold flowing water, conditions necessary for eggs to survive winter. After spawning, some fish die, their bodies providing nutrients to the river ecosystem. Others survive to return to the ocean the following spring, repeating the cycle. Not all fish migrate. The Arctic flounder remains in shallow coastal waters year-round, lying on the seafloor where both its eyes are positioned on the upper side of its body. This flat fish is perfectly camouflaged against sand and gravel, nearly invisible even at close range. It feeds on small invertebrates that it finds by waiting motionless until prey wanders within reach, then striking with surprising speed. The flounder can change color to match different backgrounds, its skin darkening or lightening in minutes. During winter, when shallow waters cool toward freezing, the flounder's metabolism slows dramatically, and it may remain nearly motionless for weeks, existing on minimal energy until spring brings warmer water and more active prey. While flounder wait on the bottom, Arctic cod swim in large schools in the water column, their numbers sometimes so dense that they appear on sonar as if they were the bottom itself. These fish are a keystone species, converting zooplankton into protein that feeds seals, whales, and seabirds. A single school may contain millions of fish, moving together in coordinated patterns that confuse predators. When a seal enters a school, the fish scatter in all directions, but reform moments later once the threat passes. This schooling behavior provides protection that individual fish lack, the group creating complexity that makes targeting any single fish difficult. The cod spend their entire lives in cold water, their antifreeze proteins allowing them to remain active even when water temperature drops below the freezing point of normal fish blood. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how fish schools coordinate without leaders. Each fish responds to its neighbors, maintaining spacing and matching speed and direction through simple rules that create complex group behavior. No single fish knows where the school is going. The group direction emerges from thousands of individual decisions. This distributed intelligence allows rapid response to threats, the entire school turning as if it were a single organism. Scientists study fish schools to understand how complex behaviors arise from simple interactions, finding principles that apply to everything from bacteria to human crowds. This leads to something even more remarkable about how predators exploit schooling behavior. Humpback whales sometimes visit Arctic waters in summer, and they use a technique called bubble net feeding to catch fish and krill. A whale or group of whales swims in a circle below a school of fish while exhaling, creating a rising curtain of bubbles that herds the prey toward the surface. The whales then swim upward through the center of the bubble net with their mouths open, engulfing thousands of fish in a single lunge. The technique requires coordination when multiple whales participate, with one whale apparently directing the group through specific vocalizations. The sound of whales blowing bubbles and breaching with mouths full of fish can be heard from distance, a dramatic moment in an otherwise quiet Arctic seascape. Not all whale feeding is so dramatic. The minke whale, smallest of the baleen whales, feeds by accelerating toward a school of fish or krill and engulfing them with a sudden open-mouthed rush. These whales are fast swimmers, capable of quick bursts of speed that surprise prey. They feed alone rather than in groups, each whale hunting independently. Minke whales visit Arctic waters during summer, feeding intensively to build reserves for winter when they migrate to warmer waters. Their populations were less affected by historical whaling than larger whale species, and they remain relatively common, their small size and quick movements making them difficult to hunt with old methods. While whales surface to breathe, fish remain submerged. Yet some Arctic fish have developed unusual relationships with the surface. Young Arctic cod hide beneath jellyfish, swimming in the shadow of the jellyfish's bell, where they gain protection from predators. The cod are apparently immune to the jellyfish's mild sting, or perhaps avoid contact with stinging tentacles while staying close enough to benefit from the association. The jellyfish gains no obvious benefit from this relationship, making it an example of commensalism, where one species benefits and the other is neither helped nor harmed. As the cod grow larger, they abandon this strategy, becoming fast enough and large enough to survive without shelter. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how complex relationships develop between species. Arctic foxes and snowy owls sometimes nest near each other. The owl's aggressive defense of its nest, providing protection for nearby fox dens. The owl attacks any predators or large animals that approach, and the fox benefits from this defense without providing anything in return. Whether the owl benefits is unclear. Perhaps the fox's presence provides additional vigilance, or perhaps this is simply coincidence and tolerance rather than true cooperation. These questions of animal behavior and interaction remain difficult to study in remote Arctic locations where observation is challenging. This leads to something even more remarkable about how Arctic ecosystems will respond to future change. The Arctic is warming faster than any other region on Earth, with temperatures rising at twice the global average rate. Sea ice is declining in extent and thickness. Snow cover is melting earlier each spring, and permafrost is thawing in many areas. These changes affect every species and every interaction in Arctic ecosystems. Some species may adapt, shifting their ranges or adjusting their timing. Others may not survive. New species from the south are already moving into Arctic regions, bringing competition and new diseases. The Arctic of the future will not be the same as the Arctic of today, and the patient, slow-living specialists that thrived in stable cold may struggle in a changing world. Not all change brings only challenges. Some Arctic species may benefit from warming, with longer growing seasons allowing more plant growth and potentially more food for herbivores. But these benefits come with trade-offs. Rain falling on snow creates ice layers that caribou cannot dig through to reach food beneath, and warming can increase parasite survival, exposing Arctic animals to diseases they have never encountered. The balance of costs and benefits will determine which species persist and which disappear, reshaping communities that have been stable for thousands of years. The Arctic is entering a period of transformation, and the outcome remains uncertain. While the future shifts, the present continues in patterns both ancient and immediate. The narwhal still dives beneath thick ice, hunting in darkness guided by echolocation refined over millions of years. The whale's heartbeat slows during deep dives, conserving oxygen, and blood flow is redirected away from non-essential organs to protect the brain and heart. These physiological adaptations allow dives lasting more than 20 minutes to depths exceeding a mile. At such depths, pressure would crush most mammals, but the narwhal's lungs collapse, pushing air into spaces where nitrogen cannot enter the bloodstream, preventing the bends that would incapacitate human divers. When the whale surfaces, its lungs re-inflate, and it breathes deeply several times before diving again. This cycle continues through the narwhal's life, a rhythm of breath and depth, sound and silence. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how whales navigate beneath solid ice. Narwhals and belugas both live in areas where ice covers the ocean's surface for months, yet they must breathe air to survive. They learn the locations of leads and polynyas, returning to these openings repeatedly, and they remember where to find them, even when visibility is poor. They may use echolocation to detect the underside of ice, navigating by acoustic mapping of their environment. When ice conditions change and familiar openings freeze over, whales sometimes become trapped, groups of animals crowded around a shrinking hole as ice closes in. These events, called sasat in Inuit language, can result in the death of dozens of whales if icebreakers or changing weather do not free them in time. This leads to something even more remarkable about indigenous knowledge of Arctic ecosystems. The Inuit and other Arctic peoples have lived in these regions for thousands of years, developing detailed understanding of ice conditions, animal behavior, and weather patterns. This knowledge, passed through generations, includes information that Western science is only beginning to document. Indigenous hunters can predict ice breakup timing, locate breathing holes used by seals, and navigate by reading subtle features in snow and ice that appear featureless to outsiders. They understand caribou migration routes that shift with weather and know which plants are safe to eat and which have medicinal properties. This accumulated wisdom represents thousands of years of observation and is crucial for understanding how Arctic ecosystems function and how they are changing. Not all traditional knowledge has been recorded or preserved. As climate change alters the Arctic, some of the conditions that traditional knowledge describes no longer occur predictably, and younger generations sometimes learn different skills, focused on modern life, rather than traditional hunting and gathering. The loss of this knowledge represents a loss not just for indigenous communities, but for humanity's understanding of the natural world. Efforts to document traditional ecological knowledge are ongoing, recognizing that indigenous peoples are not just inhabitants of the Arctic, but active participants in its ecology and the keepers of irreplaceable information. While human knowledge accumulates and sometimes fades, animal knowledge passes through different channels. Young polar bears learn to hunt by watching their mothers, spending more than 2 years in maternal care. The cubs learn which ice is safe to walk on, how to approach seals without being detected, and how to swim efficiently through cold water. They learn patience, the ability to wait motionless at a breathing hole for hours. They learn which denning areas provide good shelter and which coastal areas offer food when ice melts. All of this information is transmitted not through language, but through observation and experience, each generation teaching the next through demonstration rather than explanation. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how animals learn without teaching in the human sense. Many Arctic species receive no parental care after birth or hatching, yet they survive and reproduce, their behaviors shaped by instinct rather than learning. A newly emerged Arctic butterfly knows how to find nectar, how to avoid predators, and when to seek shelter, all without instruction. This innate knowledge is encoded in the butterfly's nervous system, refined by millions of years of selection. The butterflies that made correct decisions survived and reproduced. Those that made mistakes left no descendants. Over time, The population accumulated genes that produce successful behaviors, and each generation inherits this tested wisdom. This leads to something even more remarkable about Arctic butterflies that should not exist. Several butterfly species live in the high Arctic, including areas where summer lasts only a few weeks. These insects have adapted to the abbreviated season by developing rapidly, completing their entire life cycle in the brief warm period. Some species fly in weather so cold that their flight muscles would not function without special adaptations. The butterflies bask on rocks and flowers, using the sun's warmth to raise their body temperature high enough for flight. Their dark wings absorb solar radiation, and some species are covered with dense hair-like scales that provide insulation. When clouds block the sun, the butterflies become sluggish and crawl into shelter, waiting for warmth to return. Not all Arctic insects fly. Springtails, tiny wingless arthropods, live in soil and leaf litter, feeding on decaying plant material and fungi. These creatures are so small that several could fit on a pinhead, yet they are among the most abundant animals in Arctic ecosystems. A handful of tundra soil may contain thousands of springtails, most invisible without magnification. They survive freezing by producing antifreeze compounds and by supercooling, lowering their body temperature below freezing without ice forming in their cells. Some springtails can survive temperatures approaching -40 degrees, frozen solid, yet able to revive when thawed. They feed whenever conditions allow, breaking down organic matter and recycling nutrients back into the soil where plants can use them. While springtails work invisibly in the soil, larger changes transform the landscape above. Permafrost, permanently frozen ground, underlies much of the Arctic. This frozen layer can be hundreds of feet thick, representing thousands of years of accumulation. The top layer thaws each summer, creating the active layer where plant roots grow and where soil organisms live. But the permafrost beneath remains frozen, creating an impermeable barrier that water cannot penetrate. This forces water to remain near the surface, creating wetlands and shallow ponds across landscapes that would otherwise drain. When permafrost thaws, the ground subsides, and the water trapped above it drains away. Lakes disappear, wetlands dry, and the landscape transforms from wet tundra to something drier and different. Beyond this, there's another mystery of what happens when ancient permafrost melts. Frozen in the permafrost are the remains of plants and animals that lived thousands or even millions of years ago. As permafrost thaws, these remains decompose, releasing carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. The permafrost holds enormous amounts of carbon, accumulated over millennia, and its release could significantly amplify warming. But the thawing also reveals glimpses of the past. Frozen mammoths emerge nearly intact, their flesh preserved so well that cells remain identifiable. These discoveries provide information about species that lived during ice ages, showing what the Arctic was like when glaciers extended far beyond their current limits. This leads to something even more remarkable about Ice Age animals that disappeared. 10,000 years ago, the Arctic supported a different community of large mammals. Woolly mammoths grazed on tundra vegetation, their long, curved tusks sweeping aside snow to reach plants beneath. Giant ground sloths, cave bears, and saber-toothed cats lived in regions that are now Arctic tundra. These animals vanished as the climate warmed and as humans spread across the landscape, hunting and competing for resources. Their extinction transformed Arctic ecosystems, removing large herbivores that shaped vegetation through their grazing and trampling. The tundra today is the product not just of climate, but of these vanished species and their ecological roles. Not all Ice Age survivors disappeared. The muskox is essentially unchanged from its Ice Age ancestors, a living remnant of the Pleistocene. These animals survived extinctions that eliminated most other large Arctic mammals, persisting through climate changes and human hunting. Their survival demonstrates remarkable resilience, the ability to endure conditions ranging from Ice Age cold to current warming. The muskox's thick coat, efficient metabolism, and behavioral adaptations allowed it to outlast mammoths and other megafauna. Today, musk oxen stand as reminders of a different Arctic, their presence connecting the present to a past when entirely different species roamed the same landscapes. While musk oxen endure, other species arrive. The red fox, typically a southern species, is expanding northward into territories previously occupied only by Arctic foxes. Red foxes are larger and more aggressive than Arctic foxes, and they often outcompete the smaller species for food and den sites. The northward movement of red foxes follows warming temperatures and changes in vegetation, with shrubs spreading across areas that were previously open tundra. These shrubs provide cover that red foxes prefer, giving them an advantage in landscapes that are becoming less Arctic and more boreal. The interaction between these two fox species illustrates how warming allows southern species to invade northern regions, potentially displacing specialized Arctic inhabitants. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how communities reorganize when new species arrive. As the Arctic warms, species from farther south bring with them parasites, diseases, and competitors that Arctic species have never encountered. Musk oxen now face lungworms that thrive in warmer, wetter conditions. Caribou encounter different tick species that carry diseases. These biological invasions happen alongside physical changes in temperature and precipitation, creating multiple simultaneous stresses. Some Arctic species may adapt quickly enough to survive. Others may retreat northward as far as possible, eventually running out of land, as the Arctic Ocean limits further movement. The species that cannot adapt and cannot retreat may simply disappear, their ecological niches filled by newcomers from the south. This leads to something even more remarkable about resilience and adaptation. Despite all these challenges, Arctic ecosystems have persisted through dramatic changes before. During previous warm periods, the Arctic was ice-free in summer, with different species occupying the region. When cold returned, Arctic specialists expanded again, replacing the warm-adapted species that had temporarily colonized the north. This cycle of expansion and contraction has occurred repeatedly over millions of years, driven by variations in Earth's orbit and other factors. The current warming is happening faster than past natural changes, which may limit species' ability to adapt. But it is not the first time the Arctic has transformed. Life persists through change, though the specific species that survive may differ from those present before. Not all hope for Arctic species comes from their own adaptations. Conservation efforts aim to protect critical habitats, reduce human disturbance, and maintain populations of threatened species. International agreements limit hunting of some species, allowing populations to recover from past overexploitation. Marine protected areas restrict fishing and shipping in important habitats. These efforts recognize that Arctic species have intrinsic value beyond their usefulness to humans, and that preserving Arctic biodiversity benefits the entire planet. The Arctic acts as Earth's refrigerator, and its health affects weather patterns, ocean currents, and climate across the globe. While conservation operates at large scales, individual animals live their specific lives without awareness of global concerns. A ptarmigan scratches through snow searching for willow buds, its body maintaining warmth against cold through metabolism and insulation. The bird's heart beats, its lungs exchange gases, its nerves fire in patterns that create behavior. It sees the landscape through eyes adapted to spot predators and food. And it hears the wind and the calls of other ptarmigans. Its experience of the world is immediate and sensory, focused on finding food and avoiding danger. It does not know that the climate is changing or that scientists study its species. It simply lives, as ptarmigans have lived for thousands of generations, existing in the eternal present moment that is the only time animals inhabit. Beyond this, there's another mystery of animal consciousness and experience. Humans wonder what it is like to be a polar bear, whether the bear experiences beauty when it watches the northern lights shimmer across the Arctic sky, whether it feels satisfaction when a hunt succeeds, These questions may be ultimately unanswerable, as consciousness is private and cannot be directly observed. But behavior suggests that animals experience something, that the world appears to them in some way, filtered through their senses and processed by their brains. A wolf howling may experience something when the pack responds, something that motivates continued howling even when the immediate survival benefit is unclear. The interior lives of animals remain mysterious, hidden behind eyes that observe but do not explain. This leads to something even more remarkable about how humans relate to Arctic wildlife. For thousands of years, people have hunted Arctic animals for food, clothing, and tools, developing relationships with prey species that combine practical necessity with respect and gratitude. Traditional hunting cultures view animals as persons deserving honor, and successful hunts are celebrated while waste is avoided. This relationship contrasts with industrial exploitation that treats animals as resources to be extracted until depleted. Both approaches affect animal populations, but the meanings differ. One sees animals as part of a community to which humans belong. The other sees them as separate resources existing for human use. How people think about animals shapes how they treat them, and these different perspectives create different futures for Arctic species. Not all human impacts on the Arctic are intentional. Pollutants produced far to the south travel through air and ocean currents to the Arctic, where they accumulate in cold water and ice. Heavy metals, persistent organic pollutants, and microplastics now appear in Arctic animals, sometimes at concentrations higher than in regions where the pollutants were originally released. These contaminants biomagnify, increasing in concentration as they pass through the food web. A polar bear eating seals that ate fish that ate zooplankton accumulates pollutants from all those lower levels, resulting in contamination levels that may affect health and reproduction. The Arctic thus becomes a repository for global pollution, and Arctic species bear the burden of chemicals they did not create and cannot avoid. While pollution accumulates, the Arctic continues to inspire wonder. The northern lights, or aurora borealis, shimmer across Arctic skies when charged particles from the sun interact with Earth's magnetic field and atmosphere. The lights appear as curtains of green, red, and purple that dance and pulse across the darkness, often accompanied by a faint crackling sound. Indigenous peoples developed stories to explain these lights, seeing in them the spirits of ancestors or animals. Western science explains them through physics and chemistry, but the beauty remains, regardless of the explanation. The lights connect Earth to the sun, making visible the invisible flows of energy and matter that bind our planet to its star. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how beauty and meaning relate to survival. Arctic landscapes are beautiful to human eyes. The play of light on ice and snow, the vast openness of tundra stretching to distant horizons, the patience of a fox waiting at a breathing hole. This beauty serves no survival function for the fox or the snow, yet humans respond to it emotionally. Perhaps beauty is simply how the human brain processes pattern and complexity, assigning positive emotional responses to landscapes that suggest resources or safety. Or perhaps beauty transcends survival, representing something about consciousness that cannot be reduced to evolutionary advantage. These questions extend beyond science into philosophy, where answers become personal rather than universal. This leads to something even more remarkable about the human need for wilderness. The Arctic represents one of the last places on Earth where nature operates largely without human control, where animals live wild lives following patterns older than civilization. The existence of such places matters to people who will never visit them, offering the knowledge that somewhere, the world continues as it has for millennia. This wilderness has value beyond resources that can be extracted, representing possibility and otherness, a reminder that humans are not the only beings that matter. Protecting the Arctic thus becomes not just about preserving species, but about maintaining humility and perspective. Not all value can be measured or priced. How does one calculate the worth of a polar bear's existence, or the value of caribou migrations that have followed the same routes for thousands of years? Economic systems struggle with these questions, defaulting to measuring only what can be bought or sold. But people know intuitively that something important would be lost if the Arctic's wildlife disappeared, even if that loss does not appear in any financial calculation. This unmeasured value motivates conservation efforts, funded by people who gain no direct benefit from protecting species they will never see. The existence of such altruism suggests that humans can extend concern beyond immediate self-interest, recognizing kinship with other forms of life. While humans debate value and meaning, the Arctic fox hunts across ice in the twilight between seasons. Its paws press into snow, each step deliberate, the fox pausing to listen for movement beneath the surface. The animal's world consists of immediate sensations: the smell of seal carried on wind, the sound of ravens calling from a distant pressure ridge, the cold air against its face. It does not ponder its place in ecosystems or worry about climate change. It simply exists, moment to moment, a small white shape moving across white landscape, nearly invisible, perfectly present. The fox hunts, rests, hunts again, living the only life it knows, the only life it can know. Beyond this, there's another mystery of acceptance and being. Animals do not resist their circumstances or wish they were other than they are. The caribou walks because walking is what caribou do. The lemming digs because digging is what lemmings do. There is no gap between being and doing, no separation between self and action. Humans often live divided, thinking about what they should do while doing something else, planning the future while missing the present. Animals offer a different model: complete presence in the moment, acceptance of what is, rather than longing for what might be. This is not because animals are less than humans, but because they are fully what they are, without the distance that human self-consciousness creates. This leads to something even more remarkable about what the Arctic teaches those who pay attention. In a place of extremes, where survival depends on adaptation and patience, the usual human concerns fade into perspective. Whether you succeed or fail in your career matters less when you contemplate a seal that has survived 30 Arctic winters. Your personal problems seem smaller beneath a sky where northern lights dance. The Arctic invites scale, reminding humans that their individual lives, while important to them, are brief moments in much larger patterns. This perspective can be frightening or liberating, depending on how one receives it. The Arctic is indifferent to human anxieties, and that indifference is itself a kind of teaching. Not all lessons are comfortable. The Arctic shows that nature is neither benign nor malicious, but simply indifferent. A storm kills young seabirds not out of cruelty, but because storms exist and birds exist, and sometimes their paths cross. The caribou calf taken by wolves dies in terror and pain. Yet this death feeds the wolves and their pups, and is neither good nor evil in cosmic terms. Humans prefer stories with moral lessons, where good is rewarded and evil punished. But nature offers no such narratives. Things happen because conditions allow them to happen, and meaning is something humans create afterward, not something inherent in events themselves. While philosophy contemplates meaning, life continues in its practical terms. The Arctic poppy turns its flower to follow the sun, maximizing the warmth that attracts pollinating insects. The flower does not know why it turns, does not understand the mechanism of phototropism or the evolutionary advantage it provides. The flower simply grows, responding to light as it is built to respond. And this unreflective action achieves perfect elegance. There is something to learn from this directness, this absence of self-consciousness that allows full engagement with the simple act of living. Perhaps wisdom is not about knowing more, but about thinking less, allowing action to flow from being rather than from deliberation. Beyond this, there's another mystery of how awareness relates to experience. When you watch a sunset, does the knowing that you are watching diminish or enhance the experience? When the Arctic fox catches a lemming, does it experience simple satisfaction? Or is there a moment of reflection, a recognition of success? These questions have no clear answers, but they point towards something important about consciousness. and presence. The fox probably exists more fully in its actions than humans exist in theirs, undivided by the part of the mind that observes and comments on experience. This unity of being and doing creates a kind of grace that appears in animal movement, the unconscious efficiency of bodies perfectly adapted to their tasks. This leads to something even more remarkable about what humans can learn from simply observing. To watch a snowy owl hunting is to see patience embodied. The bird motionless on a fence post for an hour, waiting for movement in the grass below. The owl does not fidget or become distracted, does not check the time or wonder if it should be hunting somewhere else. It simply waits, completely present, attention focused without effort. When the moment comes, the owl drops and strikes, the action flowing seamlessly from the waiting. There is no separation between preparation and execution, no gap where doubt or hesitation could enter. This is mastery without trying, effectiveness that comes from alignment rather than from force. Not all of what the Arctic offers is peaceful. Storms rage with winds that can freeze exposed skin in minutes. Blizzards reduce visibility to nothing, and the temperature can drop so low that breathing becomes painful. In these conditions, survival depends on finding shelter and enduring, waiting until the storm passes. The caribou turns its back to the wind and stands, snow accumulating on its coat while it waits. The Arctic fox curls in its den, tail wrapped around its nose, sleeping through the worst of the weather. These animals teach endurance, the ability to outlast difficulties without panic or despair. They demonstrate that sometimes the only action to take is to wait, to preserve energy and maintain calm until conditions improve. While storms test endurance, the return of light tests hope. After months of darkness, the sun's return to the Arctic is gradual, the sky brightening incrementally, day by day. The animals respond to increasing light, their hormones shifting, their bodies preparing for the breeding season ahead. The snow buntings arrive, their white plumage flashing as they move across the tundra, their songs the first music after months of wind and silence. Their arrival announces spring, even though snow still covers the ground, and temperatures remain below freezing. The birds know something that the landscape does not yet show, that change is coming, that winter's grip is loosening. They arrive on faith or on instinct, trusting that food will appear when needed. Beyond this, there's another mystery of trust and timing. How does the snow bunting know when to migrate north, starting its journey while the Arctic is still frozen? Something in the changing day length triggers hormonal changes that create restlessness and hunger for breeding habitat. The bird does not know consciously that spring is coming, but its body knows, responding to cues refined through thousands of generations. This inherited wisdom guides the bird north, trusting processes it cannot understand. Humans often demand certainty before committing to action, but animals demonstrate a different approach, trusting instinct and moving forward despite unknowns. This leads to something even more remarkable about faith and evidence. The Arctic fox caching food for winter demonstrates faith that the cache will remain undiscovered and that the fox will remember its location. The ptarmigan that burrows into snow trusts that the snow will provide insulation rather than collapsing and trapping it. These animals act without guarantees, trusting patterns that usually work but sometimes fail. Life itself is a kind of faith, a commitment to continuing despite the certainty of eventual death. Each breath taken by each animal is an affirmation that the next breath will be possible, a trust that existence will continue at least a moment longer. Not all faith is rewarded. The seal pup left on ice while its mother hunts may be taken by a polar bear, its brief life ending before independence is reached. The caribou calf, born during migration, may fall behind and be lost, its mother unable to wait or return. These failures are not signs that faith was misplaced, but simply the cost of living in an uncertain world. Not every gamble succeeds, not every risk pays off, yet the alternative to risking is never trying, and never trying guarantees failure. The Arctic teaches that loss is inevitable but not final, that populations persist even when individuals perish, that life continues despite setbacks. And now, the frozen world fades behind your thoughts. We've drifted through 100 quiet truths about Arctic life. From foxes that cache food beneath snow to whales that sing beneath ice. From the midnight sun to the endless winter darkness. From caribou migrations spanning thousands of miles to lemmings that tunnel beneath snow. You are connected to this world. The oxygen you breathe was produced partially by Arctic phytoplankton. The weather patterns that bring rain or snow to your home are influenced by Arctic temperatures. The same forces that shape a polar bear's life shape yours, though you experience them differently. You are part of Earth's living community, sharing ancestors with Arctic foxes and caribou. Your cells built from the same molecules. Your existence depending on the same Sunday. Tonight, as you rest, Arctic terns fly across oceans, caribou walk ancient migration routes, and seals sleep in the water, half their brain awake and watching for danger. The musk oxen stand together against wind, the Arctic fox hunts across ice, and the northern lights shimmer above it all, connecting earth to sky in curtains of dancing color. And you are safe, warm, resting in a world full of wonder, connected to these distant creatures through the simple fact of existence on the same small planet. The Arctic continues its slow cycles, its patient creatures enduring through adaptation and flexibility, teaching those who watch that survival comes not from fighting against conditions, but from accepting them and finding ways to thrive within them. The frozen north asks nothing of you but offers everything to your imagination, a place of possibility where life persists in forms that seem impossible until you understand how perfectly designed they are for their world. If you're still awake, go ahead and watch the next chapter. Sleep well and dream softly. Good night.